6.1 multiplying and dividing video 2. This is where we get into multiplying and dividing. So to refresh our memory, when we multiply, all we are doing, okay, is multiplying across the top and across the bottom when we multiply. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This gives me an answer of 10 over 18, and then I can simplify that to 5 over 9. Okay, here, if we have a fraction divided by a whole number, we make this whole number a fraction by putting it over 1. And again, 1 times 5 over 2 times 1 gives me 5 halves. Okay, so that's just common. When we multiply, we just go across the top and multiply across the bottom, and then we get our answer. Okay, now when we do this, we have all this work. I did this for note purposes, right? But I can really skip this part if I simplify before I multiply. Okay, so if we look at this as one big long fraction, because I'm just gonna do that, right? I notice that the 2 goes into 2 one time, and a 2 goes into 6 3 times. And so if I can simplify before I multiply, it makes things a little bit easier. Now I have 1 times 5, which is 5, and 3 times 3, which is 9. So that's just a little shortcut, okay? The division part is what you have to worry about. With division, remember, we're going to keep the first fraction, change division to multiplication, and flip the second fraction, okay? And then we just do the same thing as multiplying. So here, if I wanted to simplify first, 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 6 2 times, and then now I just multiply across the top. 2 times 2 is 4, 1 times 5 is 5. Okay, so again, division, keep the first fraction, change division to multiplication, flip the second fraction. Now let's simplify. 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 3 one time. 5 times 1 is 5, 1 times 1 is 1, so we just have an answer of 5. Again, keep it, change it, flip it are the terms that I use. This can be simplified to 1/2. So then we have x over 10. Okay, so that's the general rules of multiplying and dividing. Okay, so we're going to kind of skip down to the explain. It says steps for multiplying rational expressions. We're not going to use that. We're going to use the steps that we talked about just a while ago, where we had the first step, which I'm going to change here in a second. So is to factor if possible, right? Then simplify. And then we put factors right here, if you remember from the previous page, and then write as one fraction. So the only difference with multiplying and dividing is I'm going to add a step at the very beginning. So basically, if it is division, then do the following. And this is the terms I use. Keep it, change it, flip it. Okay, so this is the first step, second, third, and fourth. So nothing changes from simplifying the rationals from the first video than this, other than we included a first step, okay? So let's come down here and work these examples. All right, so I look to see if this is division. It's not division. Okay, so the first thing I do is to see if this can be factored. It can, so I'm gonna rewrite this as a fraction, rewrite the whole thing. So things that can be factored are the things I just highlighted. So what stays the same is this. Again, I'm gonna put parentheses around it to make sure I know that's the factor x plus 3. So this numerator factors to become x plus 1 times x minus 4. This denominator is the difference of squares, x minus 4 times x plus 4. And then this denominator becomes x plus 1 times x plus 4. Okay, so now that I have everything factored, Okay, the next step is to simplify. Okay, so the only difference between the first video and this one is now we have two fractions instead of one. So what I want you to imagine is with multiplication, this is basically one long fraction. Okay, and so I can cancel things in the numerator with things in the denominator. So for instance, I can cancel this x plus 1 over here with this x plus 1 on the bottom. And then I can also cancel this x minus 4 and this x minus 4. So that's the only thing I can cancel now. And so my final answer is going to be x plus 3 over, and then I have this same factor twice. So instead of writing it 2 times, I can write it once and put a square above it. And so that's my final answer. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for this one. All right, so what I want to do right here is check to see if it's division. It is. Okay, so remember our rules. Keep it. So we're going to keep the first fraction. We're going to change it. We're going to change that to multiplication, and then we're going to flip this. Okay, so we're going to flip it. So I'm going to rewrite. I'm going to do the flip because these two don't need to be factored. The only thing that needs to be factored here is what I just highlighted. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this. And again, if you need to put parentheses, go ahead and put parentheses around the x minus 5. So this is difference of squares. This becomes x minus 5 times x plus 5, and then 3x squared stays down below. So notice this first fraction, again, we kept it. We change it to multiplication, and then we flip the second fraction. Again, now we have multiplication, so I assume this is one big long fraction. Okay, I can cancel x plus 5 as a factor, and then I can cancel this x with one of these x's, so this square becomes a 1. All right, and then my final answer is this x minus 5 in the numerator, and then 3x in the denominator. All right, so I will work 1 or 2 on the back. Let's do number 8 right here. So number 8, again, I'm just going to rewrite as a fraction. Okay, things that need to be factored include those 3 things. So it is multiplication. No need to do the first step, so I go ahead and factor. The first one becomes x minus 1 times x plus 5. The denominator here, okay, this one's a little tricky, so I'm going to do it up here. I can take out a 3x, and then that becomes x minus 1. I said it's tricky, never mind. It's not tricky. I thought it was going to turn into the difference of squares, but it didn't. So we have 3x times x minus 1, and then this denominator right here factors to become x minus 4 times x plus 5. Okay, so we look and see what we can cancel. So x minus 1 with x minus 1, x plus 5 with x plus 5, a 3 with a 3, an x with an x. So nothing is, or everything cancels up top, so I'm left with 1, and the thing that's left on the bottom is x minus 4. Okay. And then I'll also do number 9. Okay, this one is division, so we have to keep it, change it, flip it. Okay, so keep it, change it, flip it. So things that need to be factored are all 4 of these. Okay, so right here, the numerator, I can factor out an x. It becomes x minus 2. The denominator, I can factor to become x minus 5 times x minus 5. The numerator here, I can factor. Remember, this is going to flip, so this is going to become the new denominator. I can factor out a 6x, and that gives me x minus 2. And then this denominator becomes the new numerator. That's the difference of squares. So x minus 5 times x plus 5. So I factored everything, now I simplify. So I look for things that I can simplify. So x minus 5 and x minus 5, x minus 2 and x minus 2, x and x, and that is it. These two are different factors because of the plus and the minus. So what I'm left with in the numerator, x plus 5 over 6 times x minus 5. And so that's my final answer.